Good evening. Hi, it's Ruth Ann Verbaker. So, I've been overly concerned and involved with watching the Duggar trial that's taking place this week over the child abuse material found on his computer. And a friend messaged me today. She has a concern. So, here's some of the things I wrote in response. Hey girls, did you all know that rape survivors have been told to use Matthew 18 and approach their attackers? That's very dangerous, by the way. Don't do it. Did you all know that, quote, forgiveness, unquote, never actually means to be silent and never mention a thing again? It does not mean to forget what was done. God has the capacity alone to choose to remove transgressions as far as the east is from the west. But forgiveness does not mean that a human heart must forget. Sometimes we choose forgiveness over and over again, and sometimes God will allow the heart to forget the event. It's never all right to command someone to forgive in order to heal trauma. The scars remain even after forgiveness can come. The pain will go out of the memory, but the lesson remains. Did you know that although I was not offended, I can still use my voice to speak for the girls who were? Did you know that something that helps the trauma of rape victims is telling their story when and where they feel safe? Secondly, it helps them when they know that they are making sure other people, other children, other children are safe. I do not practice reading stories of molestation, although there are several out now. It's upsetting to my emotional equilibrium. However, for what reason I know not, God has allowed me to listen as 3 or 4 women have come to me in person and asked to be able to tell me some of their experiences. I count it an honor and a privilege to hold their stories in confidence. Their stories are not mine to tell. Hearing me blast off on social media about things without knowing the background may not make sense to you. But sometimes I internalize the injustices and the pain that a survivor feels. And I want others to know, to be aware, and I may at times be in the wrong. I need to insert here that along with sexual abuse survivors, I've listened to many, many more emotional abuse survivors from plain backgrounds.
By plain backgrounds, I mean those of the Anabaptist faith. There are also to be included in this list of painful stories those adults who were adopted as children and young people out of an English setting into a plain or Anabaptist home. Trauma is real, and I want trauma to be recognized and given its rightful place. Treatment, understanding, gentleness, grace, and love, and not further damage. It can be healed. With honesty and trained counselors.
I will stand corrected in some of those instances. I am still learning. I do not have a husband to honor, so it's less costly for me personally to speak out on this topic. I speak in the place of those other women who sometimes give me permission to anonymously tell of their experiences. I speak up for those children. We said Uriah Mast hurt 30 children. He says he's in prison on false accusations because one person in Ohio was not his victim.
There's a lot of controversy surrounding the Uriah Mast situation. It struck me deeply, and my question at the time of his sentencing was, how are predators developed? How does this happen? When does this begin? What do we know about sexual deviation? Jesus heals. What does healing look like? Where does it start? What went wrong when Uriah was 18 and his nephews told their parents something happened? In the recording as we go on, I sound like I'm blaming the nephews, and I want to say I'm sorry. That was an incorrect way to say it. I hold Uriah's siblings responsible. He's not in prison on the Haitian charges. Please understand that. Those charges have not come yet. The reason he's in the United States in prison is for things that happened when he was in his upper teens and 20 years old here in Ohio. The family prayed with him and got him Bible verses to memorize. But no one knew how to lead him to proper victory and legal reporting. I need to understand personally that as an adult in the United States, when I hear a child has been violated, it's not an option. It must be reported to law. We have not done this well. And this is what I mean when I state that the silence is over. If we have reason to quake in our shoes when we hear someone say they're making a call to Child Protective Services or to law enforcement, we're doing child training wrong and we're doing sexual education wrong. We need to improve. Along with that, I'll just add that you can talk till you're blue in the face, and I don't support Christian Aid Ministries. They are the mission board that sent Jeriah Mass to Haiti. We all make mistakes. But an adult male somewhere, so far we all point fingers and drop the ball and say that we're innocent. But somewhere we failed Jeriah. We failed his nephews. We failed his church. We failed the entire humanitarian organization that seeks to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. We failed families in Haiti. We failed the Christian world of the United States. We failed Jeriah's wife. We failed Jeriah's 2 children. We failed God. Because all of us were silent. It's time for the bride of Christ to lift up our voice and follow the law.
Who stood in court. I don't know the truth. God does. But people, what are the statistics? If 1 in 10 molestations get reported to the authorities, and 1 in 5 of those reports reaches to a court case level, this leaves 14 survivors wounded walking around, with a predator in our midst, free.
Circling.
Did you know that predators don't stop? Rarely do they stop. If out of those 15 cases, one predator gives the detectives enough information to indict, that's only one predator missing among us. Now, we in our circles know many hundreds of people. So there are lots and lots of good men out there. But that one predator has disabled 15 lives so far. And it's not likely that he'll stop at 15. Is it then the most kind and loving thing we can do to allow him to go on damaging one after another of our valuable, precious, innocent children? What about his own soul? He may be a preacher, but if he molests children and young people, what kind of preacher is this? When I learned 2.5 years ago that I have a sister married into Jeriah Mass's family, and that her children could become victims. I realized that I do not know if she has been taught the importance of reporting to the law. It's been a long 2 years since Jeriah was incarcerated. But I have nieces and nephews, and they need tools. I need tools to know how to be aware and be there for them. If Jeriah got found out, of the 30 children he damaged for their lifetimes, what are the statistics on how many more are running around out there unreported? He has 4 nephews we know of in Ohio who declined to report. That's their choice. But in making that choice, they chose to release Jeriah out into the world to go to Haiti and damage 30 vulnerable, hungry children. That's the 30 he'll give us names for. There's folks who study this. They will tell you that, well, this is not confirmed. I was not there. I didn't count the children myself. Neither did you. But people have studied this for many years longer than I have. It's likely for every one that was reported, there may be 5 more unreported. 5 times 30. 150 damaged lives. This may sound bitter and harsh to y'all. I will tell you that during Jeriah's trial, I sat with my therapist and spoke to her of my feelings of sorrow. Her eyes filled with tears. And the words she spoke, I cannot stop thinking about those children. I was surprised. I had been sorrowful over Jeriah's ruined path, over his wife's pain and agony of being left, cast aside, over the church's shame, over the mission that lost a great missionary. I knew, of course, that there were children, victims. Yes, there must be little black folks. But what does that mean? Here sits a therapist whose life is poured out in helping trauma survivors. She knows what those children are facing. She knows what they're up against in healing. No, friends, there's a whole perspective out there. And that perspective is victims. This could have been prevented. I'm not about sending faithful men and women to prison. But what if one of Jeriah's nephews had the courage?
Make that sisters or brothers. The nephews did talk to their parents. As adults, it was the parents' responsibility to call law enforcement. I want to reiterate. And I well know that his sister sat in the basement at church for weeks, terrified to leave her house or to be seen in public, afraid she would be shot on the streets because of the hatred people expressed toward her brother's actions. This is not without cost. Of course, it's difficult to go to a law officer with a sad story of harming a minor. But which is more difficult? Watching your brother be sentenced to prison for 9 years and hiding in the church basement on Sunday mornings because you're afraid of the responses of people around you? Or crucifying your pride and going to the law when your own child has been touched inappropriately? It's your choice. When it's your turn, you choose.
To report to law enforcement. Could we have saved the 30, or depending how you count, 150 children in Haiti? Could Jeriah have been remediated at 20 instead of sitting in prison for 9 years separated from his son and daughter? Understand, I don't think he's safe to be near his son and daughter. Ever. His illness is too extreme. There are consequences. His children's lives matter. It's been slow going changing my perspective, listening to survivor stories. It's not long for me.
Since I've thought differently about trauma and beginning to learn about triggers and to find out that survivors are more often not believed when they speak up than they are believed. That survivors are loaded with shame over and over again, being told they caused this assault, being told they're a temptress. I'm learning to change my perspective. I'm learning from history. And I implore you to turn your heart toward our Father in heaven and see what He really thinks about children and the marriage relationship.
Truly, I do not mean to obliterate my plain background. However, I am willing to lose my plain background. I am willing to obliterate it. If it means that little boys and girls will be kept out of harm. I'm less concerned about preserving a facade than about preserving innocence
and safety.
Do you notice the effects of trauma in those around you? Do you see the mama who can't keep up with her children? Who's shut down emotionally because of the pain overwhelming her nervous system? Does anyone care that trauma sometimes shuts down a person's ability to sense a connection with God? Scriptures, praying, those activities that comfort many believers become tools to beat these hurting souls. Do you think Jesus minds that happening much to his beloved? His precious little ones? We love to quote Matthew 18 and how hurting folks and misunderstood folks are to go to one another and speak of our disagreements and come to an understanding and listen and hear one another. But did you know? Further in the chapter 18 of Matthew, Jesus tells us his view on child abuse and exploitation. We sing, Jesus loves me, but then we don't stand up and stop evil. We say the preacher men and the adult men are more important than the child, the minor, the victim, the unconsenting sexual abuse survivor. In the future that I am envisioning, rape victims will not be told to repent to their attackers for luring them. Young people will not be sat down in tight little rooms with the preachers and their abusive father and told to straighten out their rebellion. Wives shall not be struck by their spouse, either within or without the sight of the children. These are the stories that I'm hearing. God's glory is not on such shaky ground that the telling of these stories will overthrow his kingdom. Indeed, it is in the very silence and darkness with which we pride ourselves that God's glory perishes. And oh, we have kept it dark and silent. We have been lying repeatedly about where we as a culture are with this topic. Oh, the news rattles us for sure. This isn't what we want to see. These conversations, they're uncomfortable. For we believe we are not the world. It only happens out there. And yet, what are these moans and sighs I hear in the ditches along the path? From whence the wounded have been cast, being told they may not speak of these evil things, hidden secrets, gossip. For 50 or 100 years now, we've tried hiding our sexual failures. How's it going? I'll tell you how it's going, if you're interested or not. I have a few stories up my sleeve. We are wising up. These casualties are not accidents. The men in leadership don't just get struck by a force that comes in and causes them inexplicably to download human trafficking images. In Caring for the Heart Ministries, John Regier teaches that in his counseling he has come across men who struggle with a literal viewing of pornography. When he sees the sneer, the contemptuous curl at the corner of their mouth, and he cites several well-known predators such as Bill Clinton when he confessed to the nation. In which this was evident.
The sick grin on his face.
John Regier leads such a man in repentance and will pray for him to be healed. Since I heard this CD said, I have also learned that there are licensed professional treatment places for porn users. Please get professional help. But there's another level. Of infidelity. This is when the man will tell John Regier, the car just turns right in at the adult video shop. I can't keep it from going there. This particular addiction has a demonic facet. This requires deeper fasting and praying to find healing. Again, I urge you, for your soul and the hearts of those around you, please get professional, lifetime therapy.
And this refers to adult porn, which is not a federal offense in the United States of America. As soon as it changes to minors, we're in a category that is entirely, utterly low down evil.
We listen to our little children tell us stories, saying they feel uncomfortable around certain adults. We laugh and tell them they're young, they're too small to really know, and their opinion doesn't count. Years afterward, such a small child may grow up and talk with a therapist. The therapist asks questions gently and tells our unsuspecting person You aren't crazy. That really did happen. It was wrong. I'm sorry it happened to you. No one protected you when you needed protection. I'm sorry. How much do you think our churches will need to pay in trauma counseling fees for the recovery of our abuse survivors? Until we begin to be willing to take the steps required to protect the thousands of children within our circles. Things that help a trauma survivor.
Say, I'm sorry that happened.
They tell us. It helps when someone says, I believe you. Sometimes they sense some healing when someone says, I feel your anger. It's all right for you to be angry. Anger is telling you something. It's saying your boundaries have been pushed, even violated sometimes. Pay attention to anger. It's important to notice. I feel angry for you right now.
Your anger is valid. Many times we've been told the verses about not letting sun go down on our anger, and be ye angry, but don't sin in your anger. Maybe it's time to listen to some trauma-informed therapy and understand how to process anger. And that our anger is valid, and that it matters how we react in our anger. It's not the feeling of anger that's sin, it's what we do to others with the anger that harms them or hurts them. I have more to say and no good conclusion to this video talk, but I thank you for listening, and I thank you for your care and concern for the little ones in your life. By the way, it's possible to check records online and see background checks. In some states, it's required for school teachers, Sunday school teachers, band members, anyone with contact in social ways with young children or teenagers to have fingerprinting done to help to track history. If you have a concern in your heart about getting fingerprinted, I would gently ask you, what are you trying to hide? If there's nothing to report, then why are you worried about your record? It's time to learn child development and child care methods.